Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, we reached to chapter 3 from Siyam book, fasting book. Chapter 3 title is Things Nullifying Fasting. The things, we're going to talk this lesson, we're going to talk about the things that may invalidate your fasting. The author says, there are things that which nullifying fasting that a Muslim should know so as to avoid and be aware of. For they invalidate fasting. These things will invalidate fasting if a Muslim do. For they invalidate fasting and make it void. Among these things are, number one, the author here said, having sexual intercourse. If a fasting person has sexual intercourse with his wife, his fasting will be nullified, and he will be obliged to make up for the day on which he had such a sexual intercourse. Moreover, one is not only obliged to make up for such a day, but also he has to expiate for that day. He has to expiate for that day. The expiation, what's the expiation? The expiation for such an act is emancipating a slave. This is number one, emancipating a slave, and these days we don't have slaves to emancipate, so this one is not valid these days. So we're going to go to the next step. What can we do to expiate for this mistake or for this sin that we did and nullified our fasting day? The second thing, and if one does not find a slave to emancipate, one is to fast for 2 months consecutively. The condition for these 2 months is to be fasted consecutively. And the one unable to fast them due to a legal excuse should then feed 60 poor persons, 2 persons per day. 60 poor persons with half a sa'. Half a sa'. What's the meaning of a sa'? As we said, that the sa' is for both handfuls of a normal person, a normal man, that equals a sa'. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a sa'. Here the author says that you need to feed 60 persons. Each person you have to give him half a sa'. That means 2 both of your handfuls. 1, 2. Each person you give him 2 muds. 2 muds. So the sa', again, the sa', it's 4 muds. The mud is both handfuls of a normal person. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a sa'. Here he says that we have to give half sa'. That means 2 muds, both handfuls of the country's staple food for each. The staple food of the country, it differs from country to country, from time to time, from years to years. Before or till nowadays, some countries, their staple food is the rice, maybe date fruits, maybe wheat, maybe barley, maybe beans, broad beans, other things. Even sometimes it will be other things like vegetables like potatoes or these things. But here we want to say that if you have a country that their staple food, and by the way, the staple food is that the food that people in that country eat regularly in their lunch and dinner. So this is the meaning of the staple food. They use it daily, almost daily, and frequently. So if we said if the staple food of a country is potatoes, so do we have to measure that potatoes with the sa' or with the mud? No, because the mud will be maybe almost 2 to 3 or 4 pieces of potatoes. This way, if we have such a food, we're gonna go and measure these things with weight. So pounds, kgs, kilograms. The sa' equals almost 3 kilograms, or some scholars say that it's 2.5 kilograms. Let us say it's 3 kilograms. So if your staple food is potatoes, Therefore, you can use the weight and say it's 3 kgs of potatoes for the sa'. Now here he says that sa' you need to give each person half a sa'. That means 1.5 kg, 1.5 kg per person. However, some scholars like Shafi'i madhab, in Shafi'i madhab, they said you need to give 1 mud, that means quarter of a sa', that means 750 grams for each person. You need to feed 60 persons as expiation for the sexual intercourse that invalidates your fasting day, and also your fasting day is nullified, and you need to make up for that day. This is we said that we have 3 types of expiation. We're going to make a fast revision. The emancipation of a slave, this is not available nowadays. The fasting of 2 months consecutively. So if you fasted, for example, if you fasted for, did the fasting for 40 days, for example, and the 41st day you broke your fast for non-legal, for not a legal excuse, that means that you need to repeat all the 60 days from the beginning. If you have a legal excuse, no problem with that, you can continue afterwards. But without a legal excuse, and you broke your your fasting in between these days, inside the 60 days, then that means you invalidated your fasting and you have to repeat from the beginning. The second thing that the author talked about, which nullifies your fasting, the ejaculation. Ejaculation nullifies fasting when it results from kissing, touching, masturbating, or lustful gazing. If any of such cases occurs, fasting is nullified. These things, if it happened, it will nullify your fasting. Yet one is just obliged to make up for it without expiation. Here, you don't need for the expiation. The expiation is only for what? It's only for the intercourse, sexual intercourse. But for the ejaculation, we don't have expiation. You have to only make up for that day without expiation. For expiation of nullified fasting is restricted to having sexual intercourse. However, if a sleeping person has had a wet dream, there will be no blame on him. There will be no blame on him. And his fasting remains valid, for a wet dream happens involuntarily, because you don't have intention with that, so you did not do this by your will. Therefore, no problem with that, and nothing on you, and you can continue. If you had a wet dream, you can continue your fasting. Still one in this case is to perform ritual bathing to purify one's self from the state of janaba. The meaning of janaba is a major ritual impurity. Major ritual impurity related to sexual discharge. Related to sexual discharge. So you need to do the bath, ritual bath, to, as the author said, that to remove the major ritual impurity, and it's recommended to do this as fast as you can, because you need to pray, read Quran in that day when you are fasting. Because of Ramadan, you do so many things like remembrance of Allah, other things that need your purity. Therefore, it's recommended to do this as fast as you can. Number 3, deliberate eating or drinking. Intentional eating and drinking, this will nullify your fasting. Allah exalted be, He says, and eat and drink until the white thread of dawn becomes distinct to you from the black thread of night. Then complete the fasting until the night, sunset. As for a fasting person who forgetfully eats or drinks, the validity of his fasting is by no means affected. By no means affected. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, whoever eats or drinks something forgetfully while he is fasting should complete his fast. If you forgot and you ate and drink, no problem. Ate and drank, no problem with that. You should complete your fast. For what he has eaten or drunk has been given to him by Allah. This is a gift from Allah for you. You forgot because Allah wants you to drink and eat at that day. Among the things nullifying fasting is when water or the like gets into one's body, the throat and then the abdomen. This is the meaning. If it goes inside your body, that means inside your throat, then afterwards to the esophagus and then the abdomen, through the nostrils, which in Arabic is generally referred to as snuff. Moreover, therefore you have to be careful when you do the wudu and snuffing. Don't pull the water inside your nostrils so much because it might go to the throat. From your nose to the throat, then goes to the abdomen. So be careful of that. Moreover, having nutrition through the veins, then having nutrition through the veins, blood transfusion, and the like are among the things nullifying fasting. As they provide the body with nutrient, the nutrient injections of a fasting person nullifies his fasting, as it is considered a substitute for food. As for the non-nutrient injections, however, the World Muslim League said that it's not nullifying the fasting. However, they said that it's very highly recommended to avoid these things in the day of Ramadan, and you can take these things, if you can do that, take these things afterwards, after you break your fast. Also, the author said they have to be avoided as well during fasting to preserve its validity. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, avoid that which makes you doubt and adhere to that which does not make you doubt. So it's highly recommended, it's preferred to leave these things at the day of, if you can, at the day of Ramadan, then take it after sunset. So one should delay such injections until the night. Now here we are talking about the not nutrient injections, because nutrient injections will nullify your fasting. But here we are talking about the non-nutrient injections. Number 4, getting out blood from the body. Getting out blood from one's body deliberately during fasting, as in cupping, and phlebotomy, blood transfusion to save a patient, nullifies one's fasting. However, the coming out of little blood, such as a sample for blood test, no problem with that, does not affect the validity of one's fasting. Similarly, the involuntary coming out of blood, such as that resulting from nose blood, a wound, or pulling out a tooth, does not affect fasting. However, if it's highly recommended that you don't go to the dentist at the day of Ramadan if you can wait till the sunset after you break your fast, because it's well known, 90% that some things will go to your throat, then afterwards to your stomach. Because you know the dentist puts some water inside your mouth. If it's tooth pulling, some blood things, other small pieces that goes to your throat. So be careful with that. And I think that it's better to leave going to the dentist at the day of Ramadan, because 90%, as I think, is something will go inside your abdomen. Number 5, vomiting. Intentional disgorging of what is in one's stomach, such as vomited foods and drinks, through the mouth, nullifies one's fasting. Yet if one vomits unintentionally, this does not affect one's fasting, for the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, if anyone cannot help vomiting, he does not have to make up for that day of fasting, and whoever intentionally vomits should make up for it. The author says a fasting person should avoid using eyeliners, and here the eyeliners, I want to say something about the eyeliners. There's two types of eyeliners. One of these types is the waterproof eyeliner. The waterproof eyeliner for our sisters, they need to remove it before they do the ablution. Before they do the ablution, the wudu, because the waterproof eyeliner prevents the water from going to the eyes or to the skin on your lashes. Eye drops, and these two things, the eyeliners and eye drops, the Muslim World League said that it will not affect your fasting, but it is desirable to leave these things at the day of Ramadan also, because if something goes through your eyes and to the nose, then afterwards to the throat and abdomen, it will it will invalidate your fasting. So therefore, these things by themselves, the eyeliner and the eye drops, it will not nullify once you put it. But if something goes to your stomach through your eyes, it will affect your fasting, or the like, to preserve the validity of his or her fasting. So a fasting person should avoid using eyeliners, eye drops, or the like to preserve the validity of his or her fasting. Furthermore, a fasting person should not exceedingly rinse out one's mouth. As we said before, rinse out, don't exceedingly rinse out your mouth and nose with water during ablution, for example. As we said before, as water may enter one's throat, then afterwards goes to the stomach. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, take water into your nostrils well during ablution, except when you are fasting. Except when you are fasting. The author says, as for using the siwak, the siwak, this small tooth stick, it does not affect the validity of one's fasting. The siwak does not affect the validity of one's fasting. Rather, using the siwak is desirable. It's recommended in Sharia and Islamic law. It's desirable, and advisable, whether one is fasting or not. At the beginning and at the end of the day, no problem with that, because some scholars and some people say that using siwak until the dhuhr prayer, then afterwards it's not recommended to use siwak afterwards. But the authentic opinion of the scholars is that you can use the siwak all the day and all the time, as the author here said, at the beginning and end of the day. According to the soundest opinion in this regard, he said, according to the soundest opinion in this regard. In addition, if dust or fly enters the mouth of a fasting person, it does not affect the validity of his fasting. But as for the siwak, also we want to say that siwak, there are small particles goes out and apart from the siwak stick, and sometimes it goes in between the tooth, or sometimes it goes directly to the throat. So be careful when you are using siwak. Most of the siwaks, small particles goes out from these sticks, apart from these sticks. So be careful, because if it's stuck in between your tooth, maybe afterwards it will go to your throat. So it's better for us, if we have such siwaks, we leave it after the sunset. There are certain matters that a fasting person should avoid, such as lying, backbiting, and insulting. And if anyone insults him, if someone insults you, what's your reply will be if you are fasting? And even if you are not fasting, you don't need to reply to him. But when you are fasting, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught us to say something. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, you have to say when someone insults you while you are fasting, say, I am in a state of fasting. I am in a state of fasting. Unfortunately, there are some people for whom abstaining from food and beverage is much easier than refraining from the evil words and deeds they are accustomed to. However, these things does not nullify it will not nullify your fasting day, but it will lessen and lessen and lessen the good deeds that you get from that day. until maybe you fast, you feel the hunger, you feel the hardship of fasting, like hunger and thirst. Afterwards, you will not get any good deed because of the insults, the backbiting, bad deeds you do while you are fasting. So it will not invalidate, yes, it will not invalidate your fasting day. You don't need to make up for that day, but in the hereafter, you may find that day was without any of rewards or good deeds because of your sins. That was why one of the Salaf, early Muslim scholars, the Salaf means early Muslim scholars, said the easiest part of fasting is abstaining from food and drink. But the hard thing, that you stop and leave these bad things that we are doing in our daily life, like insulting people and backbiting and bad deeds. It's hard for some people to do this and easy for them to leave beverages and food because they are accustomed to these things. So a fasting person, the author says, a fasting person should fear Allah and realize His might and magnificence at all times and in all circumstances, preserving his fasting and avoiding the things that nullify it, so as to ensure its validity and acceptability. Furthermore, a fasting person should keep on remembering Allah, reciting the Quran. When you are fasting, keep remembering Allah, do the invocations and dua, keep reciting the Quran and performing as many voluntary acts of worship as possible. The Salaf, as we said before, the Salaf means early Muslim scholars, for example, used to keep to mosques while fasting so as to preserve their fasting and avoid backbiting, as they used to say. In addition, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, whoever does not give up evil speech and related deeds, Allah is in no need of his leaving his food and drink. Allah is in no need for leaving his food and drink. Allah will not accept his fasting. This is because seeking Allah's pleasure and drawing near to Him through abstaining from lawful desires during fasting must be preceded by general abstaining from unlawful ones, such as lying, oppression and aggression against people's lives, properties and honor. It was narrated on the authority of Abu Huraira as a marfu'a traceable hadith that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, the fasting person is in a state of worship as long as he does not backbite or hurt a Muslim. Moreover, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, he does not observe fasting who continues eating the flesh of people. Eating the flesh of people means backbiting, through backbiting them. In a word, the author says, since a fasting person abstains from things unlawful only during fasting, he should with greater reason abstain from the things which are unlawful at all times, so as to be among the true observers of fasting. Thank you very much, dear brothers and sisters, for listening to this lesson, chapter 3. And inshallah, we will meet you in the next lesson, and we will talk about chapter 4, which is making up for missed days of Ramadan. Be with us for the next lesson. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.